I actually have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for this evening, Cindy Cassil. Cindy is the Director of Systems Integration in the Office of the CIO for the U.S. Department of State. And in this role, Cindy provides, among other things, executive leadership for the Department of State's Data Center Consolidation Initiative, as well as overseeing all the enterprise applications and integration in the Department of State. So the Department of State, interesting enough, is quite a ways down the road around data center consolidation. They actually started the journey in 2005. When Cindy joined in 2007, she picked up the ball, and the Department of State is now down to a couple major data centers. Of course, the more we inventory things, the more data centers we find. But I'll stop at the story there because I'll let Cindy talk to you about the rest of it. Prior to her current position at the Department of State, Cindy has over 30 years of federal IT experience. She was the CIO at the FAA regions and centers. She also was the CIO at the U.S. Army Test and Evaluation Command. And finally, she was the Director of IT at the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civilian Personnel. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Ms. Cindy Cassil.
For that kind introduction, and also thank you to Tom for inviting me here to speak with you today. When Tom originally asked me to speak, I thought, well, how should I present this? And the first thing I'd like to do is I took the tack that if you hadn't started data center consolidation, what were the key factors that I thought you should know? So I'm going to give you that sort of story from the State Department's view. Many people may be in the middle of data center consolidation or at the beginning or at the end. And I always go to presentations and think, gosh, if I can just walk away with one thing that somebody's doing that's better or would make our data center consolidation more efficient, then that's worthwhile going to. So hopefully you'll be able to take away a nugget today. Okay, so first of all, when I came in 2007, we had already started data center consolidation. They'd taken old mainframe computer rooms, started building the platform to bring in data center consolidation, but it was very much a consensus-driven sort of event. And when I walked in the door, what was happening was that we were out of power, space, and cooling, which was a really big deal. I mean, we were really out to the point where we were juggling where we were going to put the next system. We had a very large customer who had come on board and come into our data centers with us, and we were not able to keep up with the demand that they had. Consular affairs, very big in the State Department, the 800-pound gorilla, for the State Department. So we knew we had to do something, and they were pushing us really, really hard. So we knew, looking ahead, that these old data centers, they weren't scalable, they weren't tier 3, and they weren't going to carry us. So we knew we had to have new data centers. And so we put together our plan, and then we took it to our leadership. And we knew that we had to get this leadership support before we could go any further. And so in doing that, what we did before we went to the leadership is that we developed our business case analysis. We brought in a consultant, because for some reason in government everybody believes the consultant knows better than the FTEs do. So anyway, we brought in a company. They helped us do a business case analysis, and we looked at all the data centers that we had across the department. And even though we had been consolidating and using these big mainframe computer rooms that we had, it was, like I said, it was still very consensus driven. So people still had these data centers all over the place. So we did a survey, and we found out that we had over 77,000 feet of computing space, that if we really condensed and consolidated and racked things properly, we would only need 10,000 square feet of data center space. So when we took this to the Undersecretary for Management and said, you know, we're using expensive office space in Washington, D.C. for data centers. And so here's the 77,000 that we're doing. And if you take those servers and you rack them and you consolidate them properly, we'd only need about 10,000 square feet. I mean, he was ready to sign on the dotted line right there in that session, which he doesn't normally do. He really likes to take his time and contemplate. But first of all, we were out of power, space, and cooling, and we were going to save him money. So we offered him the carrot that we're going to give him back expensive space, and of course that's going to save money in addition to that. So we walked out of there. We walked in with a 4 sort of pronged plan for an immediate data center, and then also a redundant data center in the future, and then also how we would do our development networks, and also how we would handle our top secret networks. We walked out of there and he approved the ESOC East, which was a data center that we went out and we needed it so urgently that we went to a commercial facility. So that's the very beginning of our consolidation story. So with that good news in hand, we knew we had a funding issue, right? So we go to the funding people and say, okay, the Undersecretary said we're going to do this, and they said, did he happen to tell you where the money was going to come from? You know those stories. We all have that. So we said, well, no. He said you would find that for us. So they were very happy to hear from us. But so we've actually been very lucky in our data center consolidation, and I think this is one of the factors that's made us the most successful. First of all, for our East data center, we were centrally funded. We were given the funding to do that centrally. And we had planned to start our second data center, our redundant West Coast on the West Power Grid data center in the year 2012. Well, so what happened was that around, I want to say 6 or 7 months after we started building out the East, even though we went to a commercial facility, we had to build a secure SCIF within that facility because of our security requirements. We actually have to have our own guard there posted, even though this commercial facility has their own security. There were a lot of hurdles that we had to go through, but we got this site stood up in a relatively short period of time, given all those obstacles. But anyway, so about 6 or 7 months or so down the line, the whole stimulus funding issue comes up in government. And our Undersecretary said, I think we need to we need to get ARA funding, and we need to build the second data center now while we're still building out the first data center. So lo and behold, that did happen for us. We did get the money to build the second one, and it was decided that this was going to be a government-owned facility, and we were going to build it from the ground up. That is going on right now. We've broken ground. It's out in the West, and that's very successful. But challenging at the same time, because now we're building 2 data centers, one of them a lot easier than the other, but we're building 2 at the same time. I say this is really a very good success story because we were given the money centrally up front to be able to fund our infrastructure, to be able to fund not only the facilities, but to fund the IT infrastructure, the virtualization, and we could put that in without fighting with everybody about chargeback models and costs. And I've heard other people talk about this, and they've struggled with it, and that's why I think we've been so fortunate that we've had that happen. Now, we are going to have a chargeback model. We are targeting FY14. We're looking at that chargeback cost model now. We've got some really smart MBAs who are helping us work on that at the moment. And we're planning to have that cost model completed at the end, somewhere in the middle of this FY. But if we have it in this FY before we can really affect everyone's budgets, we're looking at the FY14 timeframe. But there may be fights yet to come, but for right now, I mean, it's kind of, I hate to say this, but a little bit of bait and switch thing. We get them in, and then we worry about the funding later. But it does make it easier, and it makes it more efficient to consolidate that way. Okay, so the next thing that I have to say is that building the right team is really very important. And again, I'm fortunate. I walked in and had a data center manager that had great vision, and he still has great vision, and he has great technical skills to make things happen. And what we decided was that we would separate him out from the operations part of it, that this shouldn't be a collateral duty. consolidating data centers. And so we made him the data center lead for the design build part of it and the consolidation. And then I have a separate ops lead, which I think has been really good. But the two of them together work so hand in hand and it couldn't work